The Weimar Triangle, an inflated talking shop between Poland, France and Germany. But what significance does it have in this dangerous world of seemingly endless diplomatic summits? The latest consisted of Prime Minister Tusk, President Macron and Chancellor Scholz in talks about Ukraine. So, is the Weimar Triangle substantive or superficial? Join me, Darasz, for how we got here.
Poland is making strides in its quest for a more prominent role in European leadership through the reactivation of the Weimar Triangle, a platform which has been ineffective for years. The recent meeting of the format in Berlin has signaled, however, a renewed commitment to a unified approach in EU matters.
I believe this is a good new beginning for the Weimar Triangle, a great format which we will all profit from.
The relationship between France and Germany, traditionally the EU's power duo, are strained. Chancellor Scholz of Germany is navigating a delicate coalition that includes pacifists, while President Macron of France is adopting a tougher stance to counteract the growing far-right opposition. Some voices suggest Poland is of essence in the reconciliation and revival of the format.
Germany is the largest economy in the European Union. France is the only nuclear power and a member of the Permanent Security Council. And Poland, the largest country of the 10 that joined the European Union 20 years ago. And today, the only country in the European Union that is a neighbor of both Russia and Ukraine.
The Weimar Triangle, initiated by Hans-Dietrich Genscher in 1991, aimed to integrate post-communist Poland into the EU and strengthen ties with Germany and France. However, it struggled due to France's reluctance to expand the EU eastward and Poland's adoption of a capitalist economy divergent from France's social market model. Despite regular meetings, France and Germany were dismissive of Poland's concerns about Russia. Now, paradoxically, Donald Tusk is mediating tensions between Paris and Berlin that are complicating decision-making during a critical geopolitical period for Europe.
My guest today is Marcin Terlikowski, and he's the Deputy Head of Research at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. So welcome to the programme.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Our subject for today is the Weimar Triangle. So basically an association of France, Germany and Poland. When did it start and what is it for? What does it do?
Well, the entire history of the Weimar Triangle is basically about looking for the content of the cooperation, because the original idea of the Weimar Triangle back in the early 1990s was to have France and Germany help Poland on its transformation and on its road towards European Union and NATO. So with Polish accession to NATO in 1999 and then with the Polish accession to European Union in 2004, the natural role, or the role which was originally envisaged for the Weimar Triangle was fulfilled. It became a very much format which required a new idea about the content, what should be the scope of the cooperation and the topic of cooperation. And what the three countries had in common back 20 years ago was the interest in international security, although the security environment of Europe was different at that time. So it was very difficult to find common projects, something what would actually help the three leaders of the three countries to show the fruits, the results of the cooperation. And for the last 20 years, we had ups and downs in the cooperation. We had some practical deliverables, but they were more than 10 years ago. Then the Weimar Triangle was a little bit dormant, so to say. And now, and particularly after the Russian invasion of Ukraine of 2022, now the situation is that there is a need for the Weimar Triangle expressed by other partners in Europe, so that there is an expectation in Europe, but I think that also in the United States of America, that the three countries which are most serious about defense, the three European Union members which are the most serious about defense, would cooperate more on addressing the strategic challenges and threats to Europe.
But just to go back a bit in time, the Minsk agreements were by essentially France and Germany, and Poland was sidelined in that.
And that's
So
true.
why was the Weimar Triangle kind of left out in the cold if it was such a good organisation?
We would have to go back even earlier to early 2010s, let's say. So there was the idea around the Polish presidency in European Union that the Weimar Triangle can help animate the development of the European Union's defense policy. In Poland, as the country which chaired the presidency of the EU at that time, worked through the Weimar Triangle and with France and Germany to propose enabling the EU in military matters. And the result of that was that in 2013, you got the so-called Weimar Battle Group of the European Union, so like a joint military unit which was established, created by the three countries. That was, I would say, at that time a pinnacle of the cooperation. And there was an expectation that the three countries would continue with the cooperation. And then 2014 came with the Russian illegal annexation of Crimea and with the Russian-made hostilities and separatist conflict in the east of Ukraine, which would have not happened without Russian active involvement. In the initial response, there was the Weimar Triangle trying to negotiate and mediate in Ukraine with the revolution of dignity, that time happening in Ukraine. But then it was replaced by the Normandy format, which to many was seen as a proof of the lack of trust of Western European partners, of the Weimar partners to Poland, as regards Polish stance towards Russia. Basically, in plain words, we have been seen as too hawkish. Yes. Towards Russia.
Too Russophobic, as usual, I suppose. And what was the... Does this mean that if that both Germany and France have come to the Polish diplomatic position, its vision of what the East should be through these years, or do you think there's still an element that it needs the Weimar Triangle when it is either disjointed in its relations between France and Germany, when it needs a larger organisation? When France and Germany are confident, they can kind of do without Poland and go back to the Normandy format.
I think that what enables Weimar cooperation now is the fact that Poland is playing an absolutely crucial role in supporting Ukraine. And when we think about the future of security in Europe, the future road of Ukraine to NATO, to EU, the future of the relationship between the West and Russia, which for the foreseeable future has to be based on defense and deterrence and containment of Russia, then Poland is instrumental. So neither France alone, nor Germany alone, without Poland, can develop an effective Eastern European policy. And simply political elites and leaders in Paris, in Berlin, understood it finally, but there had to be war, atrocious war of Russia against Ukraine, which brought them to this conclusion, that Poland is necessary as a partner, and that Poland was right, being cautious about Russia, being prudent and calling for the sustaining minimal defense and deterrence in NATO. Now, the common position is that what unites the three countries is that we need to support Ukraine and increase the scope of support so that Ukraine does not fall, and on the contrary, so that Ukraine can start regaining the territories now occupied by Russia. I'm afraid that when we start talking about the longer-term perspective and the road of Ukraine to NATO, to the EU, then already some differences are visible. But for now, the biggest challenge is not to let Ukraine fall. And in this, Poland is, as I said, instrumental, and it makes the Weimar Triangle gaining the so much needed content, topic of cooperation, areas of cooperation which have been sought for long.
I mean, you mentioned the consensus of the vision of what Russia is. They seem to be accepting the Polish idea of the nature of Russia. It's been it's been working over the last century, really, hasn't it? Since First World War, Second World War, there was a very condescending view of the Polish view of the East, and now it seems to come together in one point. But let's move on to the personalities involved. Three personalities: Prime Minister Tusk, Chancellor Scholz, President Macron. How do you see those three personalities working? It depends on consensus, people not hating each other, I suppose, that Macron and Scholz are doing now. How do you see that working in the Weimar Triangle organisation? Or does it totally depend on personalities?
Well, a good foreign policy should not depend on personalities. So in this context, before I answer the question on how the current constellation of leaders, let's say, may work, then it's important to acknowledge that what Germany did in February 2022 is they promised this Zeitenwende, so the change of the German Eastern policy, so the departure from the dependency on Russian gas, absolute change of German thinking about the military posture in the eastern flank. So basically, Germany deploying more troops to Lithuania, where they have where they lead a NATO multinational battle group in Lithuania, and Germany reinvesting in defense, so rebuilding the Bundeswehr, which was seen as almost unwelcomed in the popular debate in Germany. So Germany is shifting, changing its eastern policy. France recently, with President Macron starting this debate on boots on the ground and opening very much to Ukraine with the security commitments agreement with Ukraine, with new pledges of weapon deliveries to Ukraine. France also signaling that for now it will not be Russia first, as it used to be for a very long time in Ukraine, in case of French Eastern policy, but it will be now Poland, Ukraine first, Poland, Ukraine-centric Eastern policy. This policy has to be sustained. If we speak about the long-term peace in Europe, if we speak about restoring European security architecture after the end of the hostilities in Ukraine, which will be the main challenge for the West, we need to have this policy be developed and implemented regardless of personalities, which is a challenge, though.
I mean, the traditional policy of France and indeed Western Europe was to let Eastern Europe drift into the Russian orbit.
Yes, it used to be like that, and in 2014, I personally heard in Paris from one of the advisors that he at that time advised French president in mid-1990s not to enlarge NATO because we would have problems with Russia, and we were the blame for the Russian escalation against Ukraine in 2014 was put on the enlargement of NATO. Now, thankfully, this policy changes. The problem is, and I'm coming back to personalities, the problem is that when you see what's happening internally in the French politics, in German politics, is you can see that you have far-right, far-left groups, which of course the Alternative für Deutschland, the Sarah Wagenknecht movement, and the Marie Le Pen's political organization, the FN, that these organizations question the current policy and consensus on Russia already now. And the threat is that the Western, that the pillars of the Western policy, which have just changed, I mean France and Germany, will drift away from the agreed line of containing Russia and helping Ukraine. So in this sense, the Weimar Triangle now, and the cooperation with Poland, now coming back to personalities.
Yes, I mean, is Poland in the case, my last question, we need to kind of wind up our discussion. Is Poland in the position of being an honest broker between France and Germany, or can it be a leader of these two countries?
Honest broker assumes that we would have issues we can broke between Paris and Berlin, which I think in bilateral relations they have to do it themselves on their own. But coming back to what I said, for Macron and for Scholz to sustain the policy they introduced, they kind of made credible with their own names, the Zeitenwende in Germany, now the French pivot to the east, if you wish. For this, they need Poland, they need Donald Tusk as their partner to show that their change is needed, that their change is credible, that their idea of reorientating, the eastern policy of their countries, the security policy of their countries, is needed, wanted, and that it is underwritten, so to say, by Poland being the partner. So yes. In this sense, Weimar Triangle and Macron and Scholz need Donald Tusk, need Poland, and need also Polish leadership.
Okay, we'll have to finish our discussion, but Marcin, Terlikowski, thanks very much for coming. Fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, it's been a pleasure.
Great. And that's all we have time for today, so join us next time for How We Got Here.